Welcome to Tusome Books book chat with Esther Amunga. We are going to talk about her book, Makenna. It's the travel world series, the world travel series. All right. So Esther, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself. Give me, some information about your background, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay, my name is Esther. I live in the United States in the wonderful state of Michigan. I'm a Michigander. I was not always a Michigander. This place is so cold.
Oh, yeah.
And our weather is so sporadic. I grew up in Kenya, in Africa, and I moved to the States about 8 years ago in 2012. That's when I moved over here. And I'm a mother. I'm a mother of one lovely girl. One beautiful, lovely. She lights up my world, she lights up my world. And also, I do several things. I have a day job, which is very unrelated to my writing. I do database coordination. I work at a church, and I do database and I manage the church calendar. So that's my 8 to 5 job. But my passion is also being an author. I love my job. I love my job a lot. And I also write. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I also love to train. Training is, where the author speaker falls into. Now, the thing that I love to train most, and I'm doing right now, is training people how to write. I'm not particularly inclined to training adults. My passion is more in training children how to write and publish their own books. That's my biggest, my biggest thing. I want to see young writers, because this is a whole conversation for another day. Because I wish I had published some of the things that I did when I was young. So that's one of the things I inspire children to write. And then also, what else about? There's a lot about me. Unfortunately, I don't know how to swim, and I don't know how to ride a bike. So I'm hoping to learn to do those two things. I've traveled a lot, but I still want to travel. I haven't been to Asia. I want to go to Australia. I want to go to South America. I've been to Canada. I've been to Toronto and Vancouver. I'd like to travel more in Canada. I think it's a beautiful country. I've traveled to a lot of the states. So that's a little bit about myself. There's more, but I will share it.
Awesome. Well, you're more than welcome to come to Canada. Maybe when you come, we can hang out, have a tea party and talk about your book.
Yes. So
tell me about Makenna. How did you end up creating Makenna, and why?
There are two aspects of Makenna. When I moved here, it was interesting because I moved here in June 2012, and then I got pregnant the next month. So I was very new to the States. In Kenya, I had a really good job. It was quite a transition moving to the United States and now being a new mom. And then when my daughter was born, I started going to the libraries a lot. I was encouraged to go to the public libraries to take her. And I used to read to her when she was still in my womb. But then when she was like 2 weeks, I started going to the library with her, picking up books. And I'd go to the children's section because I also needed books for myself as a new mom. And every time I'd walk around, we lived in a nice neighborhood. I'd walk in that children's section. I was like, there's such few books with brown characters or with authors who have names like me. I have an African name. And the libraries here, we are fortunate. We have really nice libraries. I grew up in a middle-class family when I was in Kenya, but yet books were not like, a resource that's just available. Libraries, the public libraries, when I first came here, I was just like, whoa, you go to the kids section, and you're like, wow, what's going on? So at that point, that thing nudged me a lot. It nudged me so much. So one time when I was praying, I believe God just spoke to me. Why don't you write a book instead of complaining about it? Because now I was voicing it a lot. I was like, where are the books? Where are the books? I love reading Chimananda, but her books are not children books.
Yes.
And she's a recognized author with an African name. So I got that challenge at that time. And I was like, how am I going to do this? Incidentally, I've written another book. This is not my first book. This is not my first book. I wrote a book on peace building. That's a workbook, which I'll share with you later on when I was still in Kenya. And that book took me like 2 months to write. It was sponsored by Ford Foundation. And it wasn't hard. I've worked with a publishing company before. And so I understand the process of writing and publishing really, really well. So I started this book, writing Makenna. And then, first of all, I was like, I need to write a book, but what am I going to write about? Because I needed to write a book. But then the other thing, when I first moved here, I was in shock. I mean, the kind of questions people were asking me, I remember someone asking me, so had you ever used a computer before? And I was like, what? I had a Mac. I had the latest Mac when I was in Kenya, MacBook Pro. I was like, why are they asking me that? And then every time people would be like, I would tell people I'm from Kenya, and they would say, oh, you're from Africa. I'm like, yes, but I'm from Kenya. Kenya is in Africa. And they would look lost completely, so they would start telling me about South Africa. And I was like, this conversation is just not working out. But I have the thing about having a good attitude about things. And, some of my African friends would get offended, if someone tells you have an accent, and I just realized some people honestly did not know. They just did not know about Africa. And so I started writing, and this book was written like in 6 years. It took me so long. I kept on giving up on start, right? And so the story evolved, and it evolved around my daughter, who was a child who's American, but born to immigrant parents. So I started seeing it through her eyes. And what would she perceive about Africa? She has been to Kenya like 5 times. And I wanted to tell a story about Africa written by an African mother or an African person, but be able to communicate to children who are here and in other parts of the world. Now, the thing about Makenna, as I was writing it, first I was thinking about Africa. Then the story just changed in my mind. I was like, there are a lot of kids who don't know other places in the world. And especially American kids, a lot of Americans, America is very secure in itself. I mean, this country is a beautiful country. There's so much. You don't have to really leave to go see the world. You don't really have to. There's so much to see. There's so much to experience here. But then there's also, if you don't see that, if my child or other children are not exposed to other cultures, they easily would form a prejudice, or not prejudice, a stereotype. So you would think Africa is a certain way. I mean, what we see in my background, giraffes, we just think Africa is about animals and safari. That's what we know. That's what they know, because that's what they see in National Geographic or they see in other places. So I say I need to tell the story in a way that they can understand and relate to. But the first book was really interesting. I had to do it in a clever way. So that's a little bit about how it all started.
That's a really good story.
I'm trying to say the short version. This is the really short version.
As you were talking, I kept thinking of like all the different things you've mentioned, because like there's so much in just you explaining where Makenna came from. So like how you're talking about when you say Africa, people don't they don't grasp that Africa, there's the many countries in Africa, right? They think of it as one country where all the Black people come from. So I mean, and then you also talked about how when a lot of us immigrants, when people ask questions about Africa, we take offense, and I'm guilty of that. There are times when people have asked me questions and I'm like, really, but yes, I try to do what you're saying too now. I try to think of it more from a place of somebody actually does not know, right? So then I need to explain it in a way that is not, it doesn't say, how do you not know this,
Yes.
yeah. So
And just to add on that, it's that is when you get the opportunity, you grab the opportunity,
exactly.
because you don't know. Now we'll have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's, and then some things it's to laugh about them. It's interesting. This week I just had a really good laugh. I was telling my colleague that I needed a map, and the way I was saying, so she was looking at me like, what is she talking about? So I said it like 3 times. So she came to me and she was like, okay, what I'm hearing is that you want a map. I was like, no, I want a map. So she's like, oh, map. So I was telling her, oh boy. So we need to. So for you. So what I was talking about is a map, as in like an African map, a wild map. Probably maybe I'm saying it in a different accent, but then it became a funny conversation,
Yeah.
And instead of me getting offended, I'm like, okay, so what are you hearing?
Yeah.
And she says what she's hearing, and I'm telling her what I'm saying. So it becomes an opportunity. And we sat down, at lunch, and we started having a conversation about culture, and that's a conversation I have all the time, all the time. So it's to seize those opportunities. Immediately, you send someone is not getting you or has a different story, take the opportunity to educate, and
yeah, no, I really like that. Like that's a more positive and useful way of approaching things rather than getting offended. Yeah. And that's actually like it ties really well to my next question. So in your book, I really liked the illustrations. The story itself is really good, but I specifically liked the illustrations because I found that they give a lot more, like, very precise detail about things. So for example, like where the Makenna's dad was telling them about Africa, about Kenya, and where Kenya is in Africa, and that Kenya is a country, not a city. And then in that section, we could see Makenna, there's a picture of Africa, right? Because the dad got the map and he was showing, or got the globe, and he was showing them where Africa is. And so I really like that you had the whole of Africa, and then you had demarcated the countries in Africa, and then colored Kenya. So I liked the detail. And then the other thing that I noticed that you had that was very detailed was when you were talking about the difference between in language, right? So how we say one thing here and we say something else in Kenya. So for example, football here, call it soccer. And so you talk about that in the book. So that was really good. And I'm just curious to know, and I think you've kind of answered this already, but I'm just curious to hear what led you to be that precise or that specific with your examples in the book.
Even before I talk about the example, illustrations, when I was developing this book, one of the reasons it took me so long is that I did a lot of focus groups, both with kids and also with teachers. Because, sometimes you write a book that's appealing to you, or to the demographic that you're writing to, but then you don't ask them, you don't involve them. And even when I'm training people how to write, I'm like, think about the person you're writing. So like, I wish I had the images. Makenna, the character Makenna has changed. This girl, this is the third character. If you saw the first Makenna, she looked very different. The second one even looked completely different. This one, my illustrator at some point was getting very frustrated because I kept on saying, no. And the reason is because this story was inspired so much by my daughter. And my daughter herself, she's young, she's 7, but she can draw. And then she's very clear about images. So every time I would ask her, do you like this? She'd just shake her head. And I knew if it doesn't resonate with her, it won't resonate with other kids. So, and until the funny thing, if you look at her Kindle and you look at my daughter, she's actually my daughter's,
Oh,
my
really?
daughter's image, and even Makenna's mom, at some point, if you look at them Kindle, I had at some point to use our own pictures. But then developing those illustrations, because for me, what I think, this is my own analogy, for a children's book, before the story, kids don't read the words first. It's that image. If that image does not pop out, they're not going to read, because it's the image. I mean, the image has to speak. And that's what I kept on telling my illustrator. The colors, I had a color palette. I was just like, you have to put, the colors were so important to me, and sometimes it was frustrating because you get a page, you're like, it's not the right pink, it's not the right blue. And then that page where the little minute details, the globe, and children, those are the things that stick in their heads, so after that, they're able to relate to the story. So even if you have typos in the book, kids will overlook that. Adults will look at those details. Oh, she missed out this. But kids, it's the image, so, and then the examples were very, very important to me in terms of, especially like language, here, I'm just trying to think, just yesterday we were talking about something in terms of expressions. Or like, for example, it's not in the book. When I first moved here, I remember I cried when someone told me, I walked up to someone and they asked me, what's going on? As a greeting, they asked me, what's going on? And I was like, what's going on? And I was so offended, and that's a greeting. An American will greet you and say, what's going on? What's going on? I was so used to, how are you? Fine, thank you. There's a way that we speak. And so I needed to include that, the aspect of language. Even with my daughter, there's certain things, certain expressions like she'd use, and I'm like, that's not culturally acceptable to me. Or certain expressions that I would use, and for her, she can't relate to that expression. So I wanted to bring those expressions, a few of them in the book, because this book, essentially, what I hope this book will be, it's a conversation starter. It's supposed to spur up conversations. Once kids read it, if they can go and start a conversation with their parents, I'll have achieved my goal. It's not the kind of book that is just for knowledge. It's start up the conversations, start up why is it called football and not soccer? And then, have that conversation as much as possible.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So one of the reasons why I really love your work with Makenna is because of the goal that you have for the book. And that's because with Tusome Books, that's my mission. So in your, like at the beginning of the book, in the author's note, you wrote that what you're hoping to do, like one of the things you hope to do, is to eradicate the myths and stereotypes that we have about places we haven't seen. And that's something at Tusome Books I talk about all the time, the importance of reading diversely so that we can get to kind of get that snippet of places and not, just have myths and assumptions about those places. So what are some of the stereotypes about Africa that you hope to address through this first volume?
This first volume is more like an intro. It's really an intro. And I'm so excited about the next book in the series, because it's going to be the book. I'm so excited. This one is, to sort of I wanted to get people interested in Africa, the kids who are here, especially who've not been to Africa. And interestingly, I've been getting like a lot of feedback, emails from mothers. I've been getting messages. Some moms, there's one mom who was just like, what did you do? Now my child all of a sudden wants to go to Africa. Sometimes they're collecting books. And I was like, that was the intention of the book. If that was, and she's originally from Kenya. She lives here in the States. And she was just like, what's happening? And, the thing is there's certain myths, I don't even know whether myth is even a little too mild. The thing about Africa that I feel sad about. This is just something that for me it's very sad, and maybe it's because also I sell jewelry. People don't know that Africa is one of the richest continents that we have in terms of natural resources. I mean, there's wildlife, and that's one thing. We know we go there for safaris. But then Africa has natural resources. It's very rich in that sense. And then people don't understand that Africa also is well advanced. We have a lot of problems in Africa. We have a lot, I'm not disputing that. But I'll just touch a little bit, about that myth and how I'm trying to address it. Because like in this first book, you see Makenna, all we're talking about is how she's going to Africa, she's going to eat fruits, she's going to see into national parks, she's going to see her grandparents, she's excited about the animals. But then in the second book, the story takes a turn. It takes a little twist. She gets to Africa, and that's what the title is this Africa? I mean, she gets surprised. There are all these cell phones. There's also their computers. She goes to visit her cousins, and she can't just imagine, what she's seeing. And that's what I want people to see, the different version of Africa. Because when I first moved here, and even now, I still get it sometimes. People would ask me, "Where did you learn your English in America?" And I'm like, "No, I did not." And this is when I'm doing my first education in America. I'm doing a master's program. And they'd be like, "So how did you learn all these things?" I'm like, I schooled in Africa. And they would get puzzled. I mean, and then I've had the opportunity in my previous job to host President Obama when he was senator. I hosted President Biden when he was vice president. And so people ask me, in Africa, you could do all that? I'm like, yes, I could. And then I tell people I actually traveled more places to the world when I lived in Africa than I've done when I'm in America. And you see, that's the Africa, maybe it's not the problem of the people who perceive it that way, but maybe it's because Africa has not been sold that way to a lot of people. So I'm hoping that through this series, we will show people what we think Africa is. And I put that because even I have presented that in the book about the animals, which is nice. I mean, I also want to go for a safari. If someone could take me on a safari, I'd love that. But there's the story, there's more to Africa. And I'm also going to present in the second book, I don't want to also underplay the challenges that Africa has. So that will be presented, but it's just to give a good view of what Africa is, and not just Africa. The next continent Makenna goes to will probably be Asia. So I'm still identifying what country she's going to go to, and I have to go there personally to experience that. But in every country, there's certain stereotypes and myths that people have, and we need, just like Canada, for all of us, when you just say Canada is cold, the entire Canada is cold. But I mean, I've been to Vancouver, and when I was in Vancouver, I was just like, hey, it's such nice weather. It's not like other places.
Vancouver is one of the milder ones. It's very beautiful there.
Yeah. So I hope I've answered the question.
That definitely answers it. I think what you're doing, like, you saying that you want to present a more holistic picture of Africa, not just the Africa that's been sold to the world. I think that's a very, very important thing to do.
And also to entice people to go. I mean, anyone who knows me should see, even at work. Even today, someone was like, "I want to go to Africa with you." I'm like, "Come, let's all go. Let's all go. Let's all go." I mean, it's just nice. And then also the other thing that I do, not just with the book, but I do like on a daily basis. There's aspects. I say when we're talking about culture, there are different aspects to that. So there's language. And that's why we've included Swahili. I've included Swahili in the book, to get people interested in Africa and in Kenya in particular. learn a little bit Swahili. I have a colleague who's Spanish. Today, she's teaching me a little bit Spanish here and there. But you see, for me to get to learn about her culture, it's important for me to learn a bit of her language. So that's the same thing with, and that's why I put a section for Learn Swahili at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And then there's the aspect of food. Food is a thing that brings people together. We all like food. So that's the one thing, you know, when people can learn a little bit about your food, my food, you know, you get interested in learning that culture. And then the other thing is, of course, dressing is also important. You know, we understand people create stereotypes, you know, because of how, you know, the first time you see someone, even before they say something, you already form an impression. You know, you see a Muslim lady with a hijab, what comes up into your mind? You know, so those are some of the conversations that I have with children. The bigger picture of this for me is that I teach diversity and inclusion. Yes. Anyone who knows me, that's and peace building. My first book is on peace building. You know, and I have the argument that people tend to fight a lot because of misinformation.
Yes.
You know what, and then you know you get prejudiced because of being narrow when you don't know. I mean, you form an opinion about those Africans, but you get to know, get to know those Americans, you know. But once you get to know them and you pay an interest to those aspects of culture, and then that's when those stereotypes go away, and then we're able to accommodate the aspects of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, well, that's very cool. So.
Yeah.
When I got your book, I was very, very excited actually about the section that has Swahili, because a lot of the Kenyan parents that I've interacted with, you know, in regard, like with Tusome Books, a lot of them have asked me whether at some point I'm going to have like some sort of workshop to teach their children Swahili. If you had families, you know, children here. And I've wanted to do it, but I don't feel like, you know, I know enough to teach. So now I was like, oh, this is great. Like, you know, at least we can tell the families that, hey, this book is good as a starting point to learn some words in Swahili. And it's not like 5 words. You have quite a bit, actually. You have greetings, and then you have phrases, you've got numbers. It's amazing. I like that.
Yeah, I had to include that. My Swahili is actually not very good. But then I thought it was very important. And I guess also because my daughter is at that point, she wants to learn Swahili, and for her own ulterior motive, because every time I'm talking, you know how as a Kenyan parent, as a Kenyan mom, if I want to talk something which I don't want her to hear, you know, and I'm talking to another Kenyan mom, I switch to Swahili. So all the time now she goes to her Makenna book.
What does this mean?
But it's nice to hear her saying, you know, Lala Salama, you know, and then, you know, I've had to teach her not to say Hakuna Matata, like Hakuna Matata, you know, but we have the conversation. But also, you know, some of the things that now she's grown into, it's interesting when she's talking maybe to some of my friends or relatives. And so the word she uses now most is Nini, 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 Nini. But, you know, just being able to count and, you know, finding her, it's such a joy, you know, seeing my child, you know, actually going through the book. And the fact that it's not a one-time, I mean, she's had the book from December when we had the first sample, but she still reads the book. That's you know, and that's a good thing about the thing that we have at the back, you know, the Swahili, and then also the map. You know, sometimes when someone is talking about a country, she'll go to her book, a country in Africa, and she'll go and she'll point, you know, she's like, I know where it is, I know where it is.
And that's why those resources are very important, because kids can keep coming back to it.
And then just to add one more thing, at the end, I included you know, pictures of animals, you know, with their Swahili names. Now, the interesting thing, this book was meant originally for 5 to 9-year-olds. You know, it was used to be from kindergarten to 5 to 5th grade. But then people started asking for the book for younger kids. So I didn't want to write an entirely new book. So the younger kids, those back pages are like life to them. They give them life, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that now we are thinking about, and this has come from my daughter, she wants to do it. So I said, I'm going to start a Makenna channel on YouTube where she can have conversations,
Wow.
yeah, because there's a way that as a child, the way she's thinking about the book and continuous conversations, to engage other kids. So we are, doing that. That's going to be starting soon. I was very hesitant, but now I'm like, okay, I think we made as well.
I like it. That's
Yeah.
So my final question to you, who would you say would benefit from reading Makenna, and why?
I'd say who already has benefited.
Yeah.
It's first, I've been pleasantly surprised by children of immigrants who are here, who are from Africa. Children, because there's a sort of group of people who are almost lost. These children, their parents came from Africa, but they're here. They're Americans, they're in Canada, and they don't relate to Africa the same way their parents do. So they've identified with the book. There's one mom who told me that her daughter just said, finally, I have a book I can show the kids in my class that, these things actually that I tell them are real. And that just gave me so much joy. But also, it's interesting. I've had like there's one lady, she bought the book for her granddaughter, and she's a white lady. And I was just like, oh, let's see how it's going to work out. And she tells me, even just this last week or this week, when I said the book isn't going to be available in Canada, she was like, my granddaughter still reads that book. She's still reading the book. And so it benefits children, not just from Kenya, not just from America, but the entire series is going to benefit children from every place. And so long as we are teaching diversity, we are teaching peace building, we are teaching inclusion, because the third book is also going to teach Kenyan kids, because Makenna's cousins come to the States. And so seeing, what do they see, about America? How do we portray America? So it's for children. I first tell parents when they buy the book, it's not for you. This is a children's book, and then, but also, as I said, for discussion, if it can start conversations, because the children read it, but they should be able to start conversations with their parents. There are some people who bought the book. I've had several who bought, and they're like, their spouses, some moms have bought, and they're like, my husband is the one who's reading the book even more than my child, because of the Swahili section.
That's also good.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I had this person who bought the book, and she's in Texas, and she was like, so my husband says you need to write a book about the Congo, because he's always wanted to learn about Congo. I'm like, he was reading the book. I thought the book was for the.
That's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah. But as I said, the book was targeted for children. There's a specific age group. So if more people can benefit, the better.
So the age group for the book is?
Ideally, it's 5 to 10. But as I tell you, I've had even people buying for their 2-year-old. Someone just bought for their 3-year-old and sent me pictures. She's grabbing the book.
At least they can, like look at the pictures.
Yeah,
but also something, and the parents can read to them.
Yeah, and then the pictures, and that's why the pictures are so important, because that's why younger kids are able to identify, with the book, because kids, it's all about images. It's just the images, yeah. And as you say, the parents can read to them. But also, I've had a storyteller who's done a reading of the book, and it's on YouTube. And so I tell people, you can use that resource. I have more storytellers who are going to be telling, reading the book aloud if somebody wants to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, to this book chat with me. So once again, I am here with Esther Amunga, author of Makenna, the World Traveler series. I don't know why I keep stumbling on that. It is available at Tusome Books, so head on to the bookstore and get a copy for yourself and for your child. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.